Good morning. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Pre-Market PulseScan with yours truly, Dex the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live from PulseWaveTrading.com, home of the world famous PulseWave price trigger reports that we place in your hands each and every trading day. Well, welcome to Take Back Friday. That's right, Take Back Friday is in full effect. For those that are unaccustomed and don't know what I'm talking about, for the uninitiated, Take Back Friday is a day that normally, if the market has been down all week, it will have a nice little bump rally on Friday due to profit taking. Or if it's been rallying all week, it will have a nice little pullback due to profit taking. So you never really know what you're going to get. So you just have to wait and see how things develop, and then you take it from there. You guys know what it is. Smash that like button. All right. And stop playing around. You know what you need to do. Come on over to PulseWaveTrading.com. Sign up, get registered, get set up so that you can break bread with us. All right. Now, due to me being in the lab, like real heavy, trying to get these cryptos out to you guys, my goal, Lord willing, is to have them rolled out this coming week, which means they should appear if I can get it cracking. It should appear on Sunday afternoon's reports. That's right. I've been mad busy trying to make that happen for you. So you can go ahead and let's just hope that we can get this done so I can get these things up and then we don't have any more issues. All right. So that's what I've been working on for you. And sorry, it's been taking a little bit longer than expected, but when it comes to adding certain securities, as I told you, it can be more of a challenge than not. So that's just basically what we've been dealing with. All right. So with that being said, what else do we got going on? Well, not too much, as you know. Um, there's been a lot of earnings coming out because that's how earnings season is. And as long as that is on and cracking, you can expect for there to be not much news coming out. And then when that is pretty much over, then that's where you'll start to see a little bit of increased normalcy. Not increased volatility, but increased normalcy. All right, so with all that ado, let's take a look at these overnight markets and see where we might go. For those of you who missed it, yesterday's end of day report, Thursday night is when we give you the intraday price inflection points for Friday. And FYI, keep in mind that Friday for cryptos lasts 3 days. So it goes from Thursday night and it goes all the way into Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard New York time. So a Friday for cryptos is Thursday night, all Friday night, all Saturday night, and all day Sunday until 6 p.m. Eastern Standard New York time. That is a crypto Friday. All right. So don't ask me why that is. It just is. Some things cannot necessarily be qualified, but it is what it is. All right. In addition to that, you get the price inflection points to let you know where things need to close. For everything that's not a crypto, the price inflection points are for today and for today only, meaning that those are the numbers that you're looking for in each one of the markets that you trade in. All right, so first and foremost, we got the Dow right now down 116 points at 26,427. We got the NASDAQ 100 down 129 and a quarter points at 10,419 and a quarter. Even the S&P 500 down 15 and a quarter points at 3212 and a quarter. Russell My Hustle down 3.8 points at 1483.3. Bitcoin Futures Composite Index down $75, trading at 9,575. The overnight high was 9,665. And the way that Bitcoin is volatile. It tends to just violate every natural law of trading. But as it stands, we got a bearish two-bar Charlie setup for this morning, which normally means you can expect an all-day down day and for the market to close in the red. But with Bitcoin, for some odd reason, it tends to violate these methodologies. Unlike any other market, all other markets move in tandem. But with the Bitcoin, it's just a different type of an animal. So just want to give you the heads up on that one. All right, nat gas down a penny at $1.77. Crude oil up 30 cents at $41.37 a barrel. Long bond down 12 seconds at 180.23. That's 180 and 23 seconds. Gold. Gold is now up $11.80, and it is now taking out the 1900 mark. It is now trading at 1901. That's $1,901.90 per ounce. Can it get to 2000? Oh boy. So far, the morning high is $1,904.10. This is amazing. Haven't seen the market at 1900 since, what was it, 2011? Let's see. Silver is up 5 cents at $23.05. Had a pull back down to $22.58 in the overnight before rebounding. Moving on, we got the US dollar index down 8 pips at 94.60. Euro dollar down 2 pips at 116.20. Pound sterling up 25 pips at 127.71. Aussie is down 22 pips at 70.87. Canadian dollar is up 17 pips at 134.21. Euro yen down 71 pips at 123.04. Euro dollar is, I say euro dollar, I meant the dollar yen is down 80 pips at 106.04. Kiwi is down 7 pips at 66.29. Soybeans up a half a point at 900.5. Corn is up a half a point at 336 even. And wheat is on fire, up 5.5 points at 535 even. And that is your around the world market situation for this morning. Now let's see what's crack-a-lacking on the news front. Doesn't look like we have a news heavy day this morning, so that is to be expected. That's usually how it is, unless something like really is, popping off. That's usually how that goes. And that's a Friday for you. All right, so we got, let's see here, Chinese stocks plunge and lead global markets lower as investors weigh escalating U.S.-China tensions running beyond mere tariffs. In other words, it is no longer slap boxing. They think they're about to break out the swashbuckling with swords. Chinese mainland stocks dived almost 4%, while equities in Europe were 2% lower during morning's trade. All right, you guys, if that's happening, you can expect a 2% decline today in the U.S. equity market with all these crash alerts. Let's see what happens. The worst of Europe's coronavirus recession appears to be over, according to a set of widely watched business surveys. Output across the euro area grew at the fastest rate in over 2 years as economists reopened. IHS Markit's chief economist commented. Goldman Sachs, good old Goldman Sachs. All right, Goldman Sachs has agreed to a $3.9 billion settlement with Malaysia. Oh, what happened? Okay, with Malaysia, what happened? My thing just went all crazy. Okay. Yeah, $3.9 billion settlement with Malaysia over the 1MDB scandal. The investment bank was involved in the scandal when it helped the wealth fund secure $6.5 billion of financing through bonds. Wow. More fraud from Goldman Sachs. Is anyone surprised at this point? And yet they're still in business. They're still in business. All these improprieties going back to the 1990s, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter, all of these firms, and they're still in business today. All this fraud in them. If that was you or I, they would have put us under the jail and we would have been out of business. But for them, all they do is get extorted by the federal government. They pay off the federal government, and then they can carry on with doing their business as long as they pay off the government. That's why they got smart back in the 90s and realized that they need to set aside money to cover these settlements, because they know that they will be caught and found out, and they already got the money put aside to pay off the government. So that's the rule of the day. That's what they're teaching you. As long as you pay off the government, then you can get off. Famed short seller Jim Chanos reportedly made $100 million betting against collapsed fintech Wirecard. If you're a fundamental short seller, the Wirecard story was a classic, Chanos told the Financial Times. More than 1,000 Twitter employees and contractors had access to internal tool that was core to its giant hack. Twitter is working with the FBI to establish exactly what happened. So those of you that have been playing around doing some corporate espionage, you better watch your back, because now the FBI is involved. All right, and Andressine, how do you say it? A Horowitz partner explains 3 big cybersecurity trends that are winning out because of COVID-19 and the hardest part about starting a new company during the crisis. Martin Casado said remote work, VPNs, and identity security were positioned to succeed during and after COVID-19. All right, whatever. Then there's some talk about buying some cheap healthcare stocks poised to beat the market regardless of election outcome and the fate of Obamacare, BTIG says. And it recommends a bunch of different stocks ideally positioned to crush the market regardless of who wins the 2020 presidential election. Yeah, right. Bernstein says buy these 3 individual dividend-rich stocks built to capitalize on the trend not seen in 65 years. Dividend yields from stocks exceed bond yields by the most since 1955, and Bernstein has picked out the highest quality names out there. Whatever, we know that that's subject to change. At any time, they can announce that they're suspending the dividend. There's nothing stopping that from happening, especially in light of a global depression. Earnings keep coming. Verizon, NextEra Energy, American Express, and Schlumberger are highlights. As far as data on the docket, the IHS Market U.S. Purchasing Managers Index and U.S. home sales are due today. All right, so kind of a light news day, but that's typically how Fridays get down. Let's see here. What else we got? Excuse me. Tesla enters a bear market. Are investors finally realizing the true lack of growth? Of course, they're going to try to blame that, but we all know the technical reason is because it needs to fill those gaps, and then as soon as that's done, it'll come back. All right, so the panic selling in China is definitely an issue, and it's having ripple effects throughout the market. There's no way in the world you're going to have Europe and Asia markets down 2%, and the U.S. market does not follow suit. It's how it happens. It's how it goes. All right, just think about that. All right, there's talk about the flawed models again, and I've already covered that before. And it doesn't matter because they've already decided what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. They're not listening to any dissenting voices out there. Here's something interesting. that affect Starbucks. Consumers are shifting to cheaper coffee beans amid recession. So that is something that people need to think about. It says, I'm hearing demand is quite strong. Excuse me. There's been a switch in consumption from Arabica to Robusta. And that goes across the board, ladies and gentlemen. That's not just affecting the coffee industry. That's going to affect everybody. I'm still waiting to see how the gaming stocks are going to do, because you got Sony that's due to drop the PlayStation 5. You got Microsoft that's due to drop the Xbox. And I don't know if people are going to be able to afford it, man. $500 for a new system, and video game software being released anywhere between $70 to $100 a game. I think that's going to be a real problem. I don't think we're going to see people lined up around the corner for the next iPhone either. It is what it is. People have to save money. They can't afford to do these things, so they're selling whatever they got just so they can pay their bills. Okay. I think this is going to become wider, wider known. It's going to become more of an issue as time goes on. I think that a lot of companies are going to have to start being creative and realistic about what they're going to be able to do and what the market will bear. Remember, prices are all about what the market can and will bear. If the market can no longer bear higher price consumer items, then those companies have a lot of choices to make, because how are they going to stay in business if they ignore these price trends? You can't. You're not going to remain in business. That's the whole point. You cannot ignore the market. All right. The market wins. The market is smart. The market tells you what's going on. And as it stands right now, it's looking whack. It's looking real whack. So I think that a conversation is going to have to be made. Now, I'll tell you what I think they may do. If things really accelerate too bad before they physically launch, they're going to just push it back. They're going to be like, we're not launching this year. We're going to launch next year. Yeah, but that's under the hope and the auspices that things will work out. Okay. Now, yeah, I see you, Nathan. I see what you're saying. I know the stimulus checks, yeah. But see, that's the thing, though. That extra 600 that everybody was getting, well, that's going away at the end of this month. That's out of here. So what are they going to do then? Okay. What are they going to do then? What are they going to do? That's the real question. What in the world are they going to do? Because you have to be realistic. And just because, people are getting those extra checks doesn't mean that that's risk capital. Risk capital per se. Like they can just afford to just spend that money like that. Okay. They can't. I have to say, man, people are going to have this, like I said, they're going to start reassessing stuff. All right. Look at it this way. Even after the lockdowns, in some places started to ease, the economy is still stuck in a deep depression where millions of jobs have been eliminated and people are working at home. Some people working at home. And with that being said, millions of vehicles are now off the road. And so the shift in coffee demand alone is not only bad news for Starbucks, but it's also trend setting and exposing and telling what's to come in other industries. Okay. Over 400 stores will be closing within the next 18 months as far as Starbucks. They're going to be closing 400 stores. They're the world's largest coffee house, and they got to shrink themselves, their corporate footprint, because the economies are getting more challenging, getting worse. Okay. Um, I'm just saying, you got to think about this. So that means that you could see, you know, the coffee futures market start doing a little something, something as well. So yeah, people are starting to take notice, folks. They're starting to take notice what's going on. And I put it to you like this: for those of you who don't think that that's a real issue or a real problem, and it's just whatever, it's just nonsense. Really, you think that's nonsense? Okay, well, peep this. Peep this. They're thinking about, it's getting so bad as far as they're concerned. They're thinking about 3D printing of chicken nuggets. Think about that. 3D printing of chicken nuggets. I mean, that if that doesn't tell you what's going on, I don't know what does. And by the way, that's the opening bell for those of you that need to handle some business. All right. Okay. Fast food chain Kentucky Fried Chicken. They debuted their restaurant of the future last month in Moscow. The U.S. fast food chain unveiled a storefront dominated by automation and food lockers, a move that would allow for a contactless environment to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Besides reinventing the front end of the store with robots and artificial intelligence, the back end is getting revamped as well. According to a recent company press release, 3D printing technology will be used to produce chicken nuggets. KFC partnered with 3D bioprinting solutions to create cell-based chicken meat in labs that will be as close as possible in both taste and appearance to the original KFC product, with product testing expected this fall. 3D bioprinting solutions is developing additive bioprinting technology using chicken cells and plant material, allowing it to reproduce the taste and texture of chicken meat almost without involving animals in the process. KFC will provide its partner with all the necessary ingredients, such as breading and spices, to achieve the signature KFC taste. At the moment, there are no other methods available on the market that could allow the creation of such complex products from animal cells, the press release said. KFC said using 3D printing to produce the meat of the future has its advantages. The bioprinting method has several advantages. Bio meat has exactly the same micro elements as the original product while excluding various additives that are used in traditional farming and animal husbandry, creating a cleaner final product. Cell-based meat products are also more ethical. The production process does not cause any harm to the animals. Along with that, KFC remains committed to continuous improvement in animal welfare from the farm and through all aspects of our supply chain, including raising, handling, transportation, and processing. Also, according to a study by the American Environmental Science and Technology Journal, the technology of growing meat from cells has minimal negative impact on the environment, allowing energy consumption to be cut more than half, greenhouse gas emissions to be reduced 25-fold, and 100 times less land to be used than traditional farming-based meat production, the release said. At KFC, we're closely monitoring all the latest trends and innovations and doing our best to keep up with the times by introducing advanced technologies to our restaurant networks, said the general manager of KFC Russia and CIS. KFC unveiling and testing futuristic meat comes at plant-based burgers have been developed by Beyond Meat and are sold at major supermarkets and fast food chains. A post-coronavirus world appears to be filled with automation, artificial intelligence, and now fake meat. All right, so let's break this article down. All right, so we already knew that they were planning for uh, an autonomous AI future. We know that they have been, this has been in the works for a minute, and that they want to basically turn everything into AI and robotics. And so what they're doing is using the coronavirus pandemic to shut down the industry. So once you stop global economy and shut everything down, then you get a chance to reopen with all the new technology like overnight. And they know, because we've been talking about this for years, that jobs were going to be on the line because they were going to start using AI to handle things and robots. So basically, you're replacing the service industry, low end minimum wage jobs with robots, and the higher end white collar type jobs, they're using AI for that. Okay. Now, you need to understand how widespread this AI thing is going to get. They're thinking about using AI for everything. Imagine having an artificial intelligence lawyer. Imagine having an artificial intelligence judge. Imagine having an artificial intelligence doctor and nurse. Imagine having an AI insurance broker. All right, you have they're thinking about using AI for everything, everything, and the things that require hands-on, human-to-human interaction, face-to-face. That's when they'll replace that with a robot that is suited with artificial intelligence as well. So you can say bye bye to the fast food jobs. You can say bye bye to the retail jobs because there will be a robot there. There will be artificial intelligence. Look at the lockers. You've been seeing the lockers pop up everywhere. The first time I saw, lockers pop up was at Amazon, where you can go and you can order everything online, and then you just drive up and just take things out of the locker and be on your way. So lockers are starting to pop up all over the place, different stores, different facilities. They're using these lockers. Um, they even have everything. I mean, everything is being put behind glass, so to speak. Even at the hospital, they got cell phone charging stations where there is it's like a locker. You go and you put your phone in there and let it charge, and you don't have to worry about nobody getting your phone because you have a unique password or whatever. And it is what it is. I mean, this is the future of automation, the future of AI. AI is everywhere. When you think AI, don't just think about a robot, but think about everything that uses electronics of any kind. All right, so to make that even more deeper, you got them talking to you about fake food. Now, we've been dealing with um, the issue of, you know, the fake meat discussion has been on the table for a minute, even before Beyond Meat came into being. So they're talking about basically a meatless society. They want to force everyone basically on a vegetarian, vegan type of a diet where you will no longer have access to real food, real meat. Everything will come to you from a lab. And when you think lab, think pharmaceutical companies. Think think Merck, and think about all of those big pharmaceutical, industrial, empire, Fortune 500 companies. All right, Pfizer and all of them. All right. When you think lab anything, that means they're the ones getting paid. So they're gonna be taking over everything. They're gonna be getting paid for everything. And I do mean everything. So think about it. They already got you with your prescriptions and medications and your health care. Now they're gonna also control your food. So you'll be dependent on the pharmaceutical industrial complex, not just for your health care anymore, but you're also going to be dependent on them for your food. So they're going to be in charge of your life, period. It's just really ridiculous. And now we have the GMO. All right. Now we already know that GMO causes cancer. That's already been scientifically proven. It's a scientific fact. But yet we still see GMO everywhere we look. But in foreign countries, they don't allow GMO. Only in the US. Only in the US. So think about how all this is converging at the same time as the COVID. All right. The COVID is the scapegoat. They're going to blame it and say this is all necessary because of the COVID, thinking that you have short-term memory loss, thinking that we weren't talking about this years ago, that this was coming. All right. And it's being forced upon the people. Because they're saying, okay, yeah, we're doing all these things. And what you going to do about it? Now what? What can you say and what can you do about it? Nothing. There's nothing you can say and do about it. We are doing this. It's happening. It's happening. Think about it, people. This is where you need to open your eyes up and realize what's transpiring in front of you. They know that things are getting terrible. They're coming. I told you they were coming for your jobs. I've been telling you that. That's why I've been pushing the PulseWave price sugar reports heavy. All right, because I know they're coming for your jobs. And look, 50 million jobs gone this year alone, and we're only halfway through the year, and already 50 plus million jobs permanently gone. This reminds me of 1989 all over again. It's like immediately after 89, we stepped into a new world. As soon as 1990 rolled around, everything was a new world just overnight. The industrial revolution, the old blue collar jobs that you could get that afforded you to be able to buy a home and buy a car, even take a vacation once a year. You know, those blue collar jobs vanished overnight as well. Just everything just changed as soon as we came out of the 80s and went to 1990. Everything started changing, and they started talking about robots back then. All right, so we saw that shake up, and then when 2000 rolled around, you know, we started seeing them talking about what we're seeing now, and now here we are today, 30 years later, and boom. Now what? 30 years is a long time, but it's here. So with that being said, the next question you got to ask yourself is, okay, we know they're coming for your jobs. They already came for your jobs. Boom, 50 million gone, with 50 million more possibly gone within the next 3 to 5 years. You heard me right. Double the unemployment number is expected within the next 3 to 5 years. That's something you won't hear them talk about on the news. And guess what else? So they came for your jobs. Now they're coming for your pensions. They're coming for your pensions, ladies and gentlemen. I've been warning you about the pensions. They're coming for the pensions next. And with pensions, the final round is when they come for your benefits. That means they're coming for your Medicare, your Medicaid, your TANF, all of that. And with that includes your disability check, ladies and gentlemen. They're coming for your SSI. They're coming for your SSI, disability. Do you know how many people are on disability? and rightfully so. After 30 years, did the Disabilities Act work? 30 years ago, President George H.W. Bush signed on July 26, 1990, the Americans and Disabilities Act, which was supposed to create a new era of equality and justice. Instead, the ADA often turns disabilities into assets, encouraging far more people to claim to be disabled to receive special treatment or privileges. Now, the ADA's breadth and vagueness has spurred a deluge of absurd federal decree and more than 500,000 lawsuits that risk stigmatizing people the law sought to assist. The ADA is essentially a federal command for people to treat certain other people nice, with harsh penalties for any behavior considered not nice, and with niceness defined on an on case-by-case basis through endless court cases and complaint settlements. Anyone who is disabled acquires a legal right to request accommodations from employers and others, with the federal government and private lawyers waiting to sue anyone who fails to accommodate. Congress defined disability far more broadly than most Americans recognize, including anyone who claims to have significant trouble standing, lifting, bending, reading, concentrating, or thinking. The ADA is known as Attorney's Dreams Answered. According to lawyer Mark Pulliam, the ADA may be the most widely abused law in our history. Nationwide, a cottage industry has developed among a bottom-feeding element of the plaintiffs' bar that specializes in bringing a high volume of cookie-cutter lawsuits against small businesses for technical violations of the ADA and extorting quick settlements of several $1,000s each. Federal judges have characterized mass produce ADA lawsuits as a sham and an ongoing scheme to bilk attorney's fees from the defendant. Hundreds of Florida businesses were hit with cookie cutter ADA access lawsuits in 2016 and 2019, complaining that the pipes in the bathrooms weren't properly wrapped and similar grave perils. The Florida News Press reported that some of the harshest critics of these suits came from people who are disabled or advocate on behalf of people with disabilities. Kevin Berry, co-chairman of the Southwest Florida ADA Council, complained that the lawsuit surge has the reverse effect. If someone comes in with a wheelchair or an obvious disability, the business owner is saying, "Here comes a lawsuit." One federal judge denounced the lawyer filing such lawsuits as behaving like a parasite disguised as a social engineer. But the legal carpet bombing continues. Late last year, 4 law firms filed more than 100 punitive class actions charging that retailers are violating the ADA by marketing gift cards that do not include Braille versions. As the Cato Institute's Walter Olson, one of the ADA's most persistent and perceptive critics, reported. I'm telling you, man, this is the world that we're getting, and this is the world that we deserve because you know what? We've asked for it, and now you got it. You got it. Now, with that being going on, there's also the idea and the fact that we're seeing a federal coup to overthrow the United States and just do away with the 10th Amendment. All that is underway right now while I am talking to you. You need to be aware of that as well. All right. What is unfolding before our very eyes, with police agencies defying local governments in order to tap into the power of federal militarized troops in order to put down domestic unrest, could very quickly snowball into an act of aggression against the states, a coup by armed militarized agents of the federal government. At a minimum, this is an attack on the 10th Amendment, which affirms the sovereignty of the states and the citizenry, and the right of the states to stand as a bulwark against overreach and power grabs by the federal government. If you're still deluding yourself into believing that this thinly veiled exercise in martial law is anything other than an attempt to bulldoze what remains of the Constitution and reinforce the iron-fisted rules of the police state, you need to stop drinking the Kool-Aid right away. This is no longer about partisan politics or civil unrest or even authoritarian impulses. This is a turning point, ladies and gentlemen. Unless we take back the reins, and soon, looking back on this time years from now, historians may well point to the events of 2020 as the death blow to America's short-lived experiment in self-government. The government's recent actions in Portland, Oregon, when unidentified federal agents believed to be border police, ICE, and DHS agents wearing military fatigues and patches that just say police and sporting all kinds of weapons, descended uninvited on the city in unmarked vehicles, snatching protesters off the street and detaining them without formally arresting them or offering any explanation of why they're being held, is just a foretaste of what's to come. Most of you are unaware of that breaking story. One of those detained was a 53-year-old disabled Navy veteran who was in downtown Portland during the protest, but not a participant. Concerned about the tactics being used by government agents who had taken an oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution, Christopher David tried to speak the secret police. Almost immediately, he was assaulted by federal agents, beaten with batons, and pepper sprayed. Another peaceful protester was reportedly shot in the head with an impact weapon by this federal goon squad. The Trump administration has already announced its plans to deploy these Border Patrol agents to other cities across the country. Chicago is supposedly next in an apparent bid to put down civil unrest. Yet the overriding concerns by state and local government officials to Trump's plan suggest that weaponizing the Department of Homeland Security as an occupying army will only provoke more violence and unrest. And you know what? The American people have been set up. Under the guise of protecting federal properties against civil unrest, the Trump administration has formed a task force of secret agents who look, dress, and act like military stormtroopers on a raid and have been empowered to roam cities in unmarked vehicles, snatching citizens off the streets, whether or not they've been engaged in illegal activities. As The Guardian reported, the incidents being described sound eerily reminiscent of the CIA's post 9/11 rendition program under George W. Bush, where intelligence agents would roll up in unmarked vans in foreign countries, blindfold terrorism suspects, many of whom turned out to be innocent, and kidnap them without explanation. Only instead of occurring on the streets of Italy or the Middle East, it's happening in downtown Portland. The so-called racial justice activists who have made looting, violence, vandalism, and intimidation tactics the hallmarks of their protests have played right into the government's hands. They have delivered all of us into the police state's hands. There's a reason Trump has tapped the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Customs and Border Protection for this dirty business. These agencies are notorious for their lawlessness, routinely sidestepping the Constitution and trampling on the rights of anyone who gets in their way, including legal citizens. Indeed, it was only a matter of time before these roving bands of Border Patrol agents began flexing their muscles far beyond the nation's borders and exercising their right to disregard the Constitution at every turn. Except these Border Patrol cops aren't just disregarding the Constitution. They're trampling all over the Constitution, especially the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits the government from carrying out egregious warrantless searches and seizures without probable cause. As part of the government's so-called crackdown on illegal immigration, drugs, and trafficking, its Border Patrol cops have been expanding their reach, roaming further afield of subjecting greater numbers of Americans to warrantless searches, ID checkpoints, transportation checks, and even surveillance on private property far beyond the boundaries of the borderlands. The so-called border, once a thin borderline, has become an ever-thickening band spreading deeper and deeper inside the country. Now, with the latest salvo by the Trump administration and its so-called crackdown on rioting and civil unrest, America itself is about to become a constitution-free zone where freedom is off limits and government agents have all the power and we the people have none. The Custom and Border Protection CPB, with its more than 60,000, that's right, 60,000 employees, supplemented by the National Guard and the U.S. military, is an arm of the Department of Homeland Security, a national police force imbued with all the brutality, ineptitude, and corruption such a role implies, as journalist Todd Miller explains. In these vast domains, Homeland Security authorities can institute roving patrols with broad extra-constitutional powers backed by national security, immigration enforcement, and drug interdiction mandates. There, the Border Control can set up traffic checkpoints and fly surveillance drones overhead with high-powered cameras and radar that track your movements. Within 25 miles of the international boundary, CPB agents can enter a person's private property without a warrant. Just about every nefarious deed, tactic, or thuggish policy advanced by the government today can be traced back to the Department of Homeland Security, its police state mindset, and the billions of dollars it distributes to local police agencies in the form of grants to transform them into extensions of the military. As Miller points out, the government has turned the nation's expanding border regions into a right place to experiment with tearing apart the Constitution, a place where not just undocumented border crossers, but millions of borderland residents have become the targets of continual surveillance. Now, unfortunately, they were doing this back in the early 2000s with all of their war games right in the heart of inner cities. They did it in Baltimore. They did it in Florida. They've been doing it in California. They've been doing all these drills. They're calling it urban warfare. Saying, "Oh, we're training here so that we can do this abroad in Afghanistan and stuff," which was a bold-faced lie. We got mad military bases that have all of those training facilities available to them. We got bases in the mountains, bases in the snow regions, bases in the desert regions where they can go and train and do that. They do not have to be in an actual city to do that. The reason why they had them in the actual cities so that they could know how to move on U.S. soil. Don't be fooled, ladies and gentlemen. They've been practicing this for 20 years. In much the same way that police across the country have been schooled in the art of sidestepping the Constitution, border cops have also been drilled in the art of anything goes in the name of national security. In fact, according to the FOIA document shared with The Intercept, border cops even have a checklist of possible behaviors that warrant overriding the Constitution and subjecting individuals, including American citizens, to stops, searches, seizures, interrogations, and even arrests. For instance, if you're driving a vehicle that to a border cop looks unusual in some way, you can be stopped. If your passengers look dirty or unusual, you can be stopped. If you or your passengers avoid looking at a cop, you can be stopped. If you or your passengers look too long at a cop, you can be stopped. If you're anywhere near a border, near being within 100 miles of a border, or in a city, or on a bus, or at an airport, you can be stopped and asked to prove you're legally allowed to be in the country. If you're traveling on a public road that smugglers and other criminals may have traveled, you can be stopped. If you're not driving in the same direction as other cars, you can be stopped. If you appear to be avoiding a police checkpoint, you can be stopped. If your car appears to be weighed down, you can be stopped. If your vehicle is from out of town, wherever that might be, you can be stopped. If you're driving a make of a car that criminal types have also driven, you can be stopped. If your car appears to have been altered or modified, you can be stopped. If the cargo area in your vehicle is covered, you can be stopped. If you're driving during a time of day or night that border cops find suspicious, you can be stopped. If you're driving when border cops are changing shifts, you can be stopped. If you're driving in a motorcade or with another vehicle, you can be stopped. If your car appears dusty, you can be stopped. If the people with you are trying to avoid being seen or exhibiting unusual behavior, you can be stopped. If you slow down after seeing a cop, you can be stopped. In Portland, which is 400 miles from the border, protesters didn't even have to be near federal buildings to be targeted. Some claim to be targeted for simply wearing black clothing in an area of a demonstration. Are you starting to get the picture yet? This was never about illegal aliens and border crossings at all. It's been a test to see how far we, the people, will allow the government to push the limits of the Constitution, all in an effort to keep us safe. We've been failing this particular test for a long time, ladies and gentlemen. When are we going to say enough is enough in the United States of America? It was 1798 when Americans, their fears stoked by rumblings of a quasi-war with France, failed to protest the Alien and Sedition Acts, which criminalized anti-government speech, empowered the government to deport dangerous non-citizens, and made it harder for immigrants to vote. During the Civil War, Americans would, along with Abraham Lincoln, suspended the writ of habeas corpus, the right to a speedy trial, and authorized government officials to spy on Americans' mail. During World War I, Americans took it in stride when President Woodrow Wilson and Congress adopted the Espionage and Sedition Acts, which made it a crime to interfere with the war effort and criminalize any speech critical of the war. Why do you need to do that if the war is just according to what you say? By World War II, Americans were marching in lockstep with the government's expanding war powers to imprison Japanese American citizens in detainment camps, censor mail, and lay the groundwork for the future surveillance state. Fast forward to the Cold War's Red Scares, the McCarthy's era hearings on un-American activities, and the government surveillance of civil rights activists such as Martin Luther King Jr., all done in the name of national security. Hey, we're just doing this to keep you safe. By the time 9/11 rolled around, all George W. Bush had to do was claim the country was being invaded by terrorists, and the government was given greater powers to spy, search, detain and arrest American citizens in order to keep America safe. The terrorist invasion never really happened, but the government kept its newly acquired police powers made possible by the nefarious USA Patriot Act. Barack Obama continued Bush's trend of undermining the Constitution, going so far as to give the military the power to strip Americans of their constitutional rights, label them extremists, and detain them indefinitely without trial, all in the name of keeping America safe. Despite the fact that the breadth of the military's power to detain American citizens violates not only U.S. law and the Constitution, but also international laws. The government has refused to relinquish its detention powers made possible by the National Defense Authorization Act, known as NDAA. Then Donald Trump took office, claiming the country was being invaded by dangerous immigrants and insisting that the only way to keep America safe was to build an expensive border wall, expand the reach of Border Patrol, and empower the military to assist with border control. That so-called immigration crisis is now morphed into multiple crises: domestic extremism, the COVID-19 pandemic, race wars, civil unrest, etc., that the government is eager to use in order to expand its illegal powers. Yet, as we've learned the hard way, once the government acquires and uses additional powers to spy on its citizens, to carry out surveillance, to transform its police forces into extensions of the police, to seize taxpayer funds, to wage endless wars, to censor and silence dissidents, to identify potential troublemakers, to detain citizens without due process, it does not voluntarily relinquish those powers. Ladies and gentlemen, this should break it down to you fully that it doesn't matter who gets in office. Their first and foremost job is to carry on the former president's unfinished tasks. That's what they do. Are you seeing the full picture now? And this further gives us more insight into what I think is one of the most interesting shows on Prime, and it's called Grimm. And it's funny that it takes place in Portland, Oregon. And there is basically an invasion of Vesan, which are people who transform into beasts and animals and demons and all types of scary things that go bump in the night. Okay? So basically, they're showing you that Portland is being invaded by monsters. The monsters in this case is the federal government. Very neat way to slip that in there, isn't it? All right, this is a slippery slope in which we've been traveling for far too long. We got to get off this merry-go-round. As Yale historian Timothy Snyder explains, this is a classic way that violence happens in authoritarian regimes, whether it's Franco's Spain or whether it's the Russian Empire. The people who are getting used to committing violence on the border are then brought in to commit violence against people in the interior, end quote. Sure, it's the Trump administration calling the shots right now, but its government agents aren't with totalitarian powers and beholden to the bureaucratic deep state who are carrying out these orders in defiance of the U.S. Constitution and all that it represents. Remember, folks, Alex Jones revealed years ago that government agents were being trained that the founding fathers were terrorists. All right, he showed that video that the agents were in class, and in this class, that's what they were learning, that the founding fathers were terrorists. Now, whether it's Trump or Biden or someone else altogether, this year or a dozen years from now, the damage has been done. All right, and I have to tell you, I don't know if people can turn it back. We have allowed the president to acquire dictatorial powers that can be unleashed at any time and at any moment. There's a reason the Trump administration is consulting with needs.You, the Bush era attorney notorious for justifying waterboarding torture tactics against detainees. They're not looking to understand how to follow the law and abide by Constitution. Rather, they're desperately seeking ways to thwart the Constitution. As Harvard constitutional law professor Lawrence Tribe recognizes, quote, the dictatorial hunger for power is insatiable, end quote. This is how it begins. This is how it always begins. So don't be fooled into thinking any of this will change when the next election rolls around. It doesn't matter who gets in office, ladies and gentlemen. The outcome will be the same. It will be the same. I hope you guys learned something valuable today because this is getting real, man. This is getting real. All right, do me a solid. Go ahead and smash that like button. And remember, PulseWaveTrading.com. Remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back. Everybody have a blessed weekend. See you back here on Monday. Peace.